Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're cracking open the file on the 1975 Yellow Sam coup. We are going to decode what is, quite frankly, the ultimate victimless heist pulled off in broad daylight against a multi-million-pound industry.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to put your investigative journalist hat on for a second. Our central mystery today is this: how exactly do you beat a rigged system without breaking a single solitary rule? Most people approach a highly controlled environment and try to find some sneaky way to cheat it, or they just throw their hands up and rely on blind luck. But in the summer of 1975, a man named Barney Curley found a way to bypass luck entirely. He executed a plan so meticulously precise that he completely dismantled the house's advantage without ever crossing a legal line.
You see, Barney Curley wasn't just some gambler hoping for a lucky break on a weekend trip. No, he was a mastermind of intelligence, patience, and pure strategy. Looking at the evidence, it's clear he quietly and methodically studied the betting industry's hidden structural flaws. He treated the horse racing betting market like a locked safe. He was absolutely convinced that if he just sat there and listened to the tumblers long enough, he would eventually hear the exact combination needed to spring it wide open.
To really grasp how he pulled this off, we have to forget everything we know about today's instant digital betting algorithms. The ones running on real-time data and ultra-secure servers. Back in the 1970s, the entire industry relied on incredibly fragile, easily delayed analog telephone lines. Bookmakers all across the country depended heavily on these phone lines to know what was happening at the track so they could adjust their odds. If those lines went down, or even if the information just traveled a little too slowly, the bookmakers were literally flying blind. And that analog fragility? That was the exact vulnerability Curley decided to exploit.
So who actually spots a vulnerability like that? Well, Curley definitely wasn't your typical gambling syndicate boss. Early in his life, he actually trained for the priesthood. He lived this life of strict discipline and deep spiritual study before transitioning into business where, frankly, he faced a few failures. But this highly unusual background gave him a ruthless structural logic. When he finally turned his attention to horse racing, he didn't just see horses and jockeys out on the grass. He saw a mathematical system waiting to be solved. He saw structure, he saw patterns, and most importantly, he saw weaknesses. He brought the rigorous, quiet study of a priest right into the chaotic, loud world of the racetrack.
Let's move to see how this builds chronologically, because a perfect heist requires a perfect timeline. Months prior to the event, Curley acquired a horse named Yellow Sam. But instead of training it to win right out of the gate, he spent weeks intentionally running the poor horse in highly unfavorable conditions. He was purposely tanking the horse's track record. Then, as we move down the timeline to the day of the race, June 26, 1975, the trap is set. He deploys a massive synchronized network of bettors to shops all across the country, coordinating them perfectly for a masterstroke just minutes before the race begins.
This wasn't just race prep. This was pure psychological manipulation. By forcing Yellow Sam to perform so poorly in all those early races, Curley was feeding the bookmakers exactly what they expected to see: a weak, totally unthreatening horse. He was conditioning them to blindly raise the odds. Essentially, he built a fictional narrative of a guaranteed loser, inflating the payout odds to incredibly high levels, just to tempt people into throwing their money away. And the crazy part? The industry bought it entirely. Hook, line, and sinker.
Now, what's really interesting about this blueprint is how devastatingly simple the actual execution was. It basically breaks down into 3 precise steps. Step 1. You have a literal army of accomplices waiting in betting shops across the nation, all checking their watches. Step 2, you completely paralyze the bookmaker's ability to communicate with the track. And Step 3, you strike all at once. If any one of these steps happened even slightly out of order, the bookies would catch on, drop the odds, and the whole coup would fail. It required absolute military-level precision.
The clues all point right to the centerpiece of the operation, the Bellestown blackout. You have to remember, the Bellestown racecourse in 1975 had exactly one public telephone line. Just one. And that's what the track bookies used to call out to the off-track shops to update the national odds. So, Curley placed an accomplice in that single phone booth just before the race, who proceeded to make a long, desperate, agonizingly slow fake call to a hospital about a sick relative. Because it was an emergency, no one forced him out of the booth. With one incredibly low-tech fake phone call, an entire multi-million-pound betting network was completely crippled.
Close your eyes and just imagine the sensory atmosphere inside those off-track betting shops at that exact moment. Picture yourself as an investigator walking into the room. The air is thick with cigarette smoke. The race is just minutes away. The big clock on the wall is loudly ticking down.
bettors are rustling their slips, nervously shifting their weight. But behind the counter, dead silence. The bookmakers are frantically picking up their phones, trying to get the latest odds from Bellistown. But there's nothing. No updates, no warnings. They are entirely blind. And in that tense, heavy silence, Curly's synchronized army steps right up to the counter and pours in massive amounts of cash on Yellow Sam at those wildly inflated, outdated odds.
Then, the gates open, the race runs, and Yellow Sam, who is finally allowed to run in his preferred conditions, absolutely dominates. He crosses the finish line in first place. The payout? A staggering £300,000. Adjusted for inflation, we are looking at a payout in the millions today. The bookmakers were completely shell-shocked. They had taken on a massive, massive liability without ever knowing the trap had been sprung until it was far, far too late.
And this brilliantly illustrates how this single, well-executed event permanently altered the entire landscape. Caught completely off guard, the industry couldn't just brush this off as a bad day at the office. They immediately placed stricter controls on large wagers. They permanently upgraded their analog communication systems to ensure a single phone booth could never, ever hold the entire market hostage again. The fundamental rules of the betting industry had to be completely rewritten, all because one guy noticed a bottleneck and exploited it perfectly.
So the crucial point is, the ultimate twist of this story isn't actually the heist itself. It's what came after. Later in life, Barney Curley suffered an unimaginable personal tragedy when he lost his son, and the man who had been this cold, calculating, strategic mastermind, extracting wealth from rigid systems, was utterly transformed. He shifted his vast intellect and boundless energy toward deep empathy. He became a dedicated philanthropist, taking the millions he had acquired and using them to build schools and support communities across Africa. He transitioned completely from outsmarting systems to serving humanity.
We all exist within rigid systems every single day, right? Financial, professional, societal. Barney Curley showed us that while most people blindly play by the rules exactly as they are handed to them, the real power lies in stepping back and studying how those rules actually work. Perspective is literally everything. If you found this breakdown fascinating and want to uncover more hidden systems and the incredible stories behind them, make sure to subscribe for our next explainer. Keep questioning the system, and I'll see you next time.